The year is 1948. Like many communities across the country, the lower mainland region of White Rock, South Surrey in British Columbia is experiencing a post-war boom that's putting a strain on the area's services, including healthcare. In fact, the closest hospital is over an hour away, an unnerving prospect for an expectant mom going into labor. Enter a group of determined young women, some of them the pregnant wives of overworked local doctors. Their monumental goal? To raise initial funding for a much-needed hospital closer to home. But to do so, they have to set out on foot along the mostly dirt roads that connect neighborhoods and knock on doors as they search for support.
The reason that the hospital arrived in White Rock is because this group of women with great vision and foresight and dedication decided that a hospital was required in White Rock. None of them wanted to be in labor going to Royal Columbian Hospital in New Westminster.
In this episode, we'll learn how today's Peace Arch Hospital owes its existence to the groundwork laid down by these enterprising women, and how this informal network of volunteers came together to form a group that, to this day, remains indispensable to the well-being of both the hospital and the community it serves.
Hello, I'm Lance Peverley, and I'm honored to be asked by the Peace Arch Hospital Foundation to take over hosting duties of this Power to Heal podcast from the great Wayne Cox. I don't have Wayne's incredible broadcasting background, but as a former print media journalist, and having lived in either White Rock or South Surrey most of my life, I certainly share his enthusiasm for the people who help form and improve our shared community.
This is the Power to Heal. In this series of podcasts, we'll focus on the many innovative ways Peace Arch Hospital, located in White Rock, British Columbia, Canada, has been an integral part of its community. We'll take you behind the scenes of the hospital's dynamic fundraising arm and talk to those who are instrumental in creating new initiatives to help this important healthcare facility grow and evolve along with the town it serves. In 2024, two important anniversaries were celebrated at Peace Arch. It's been 70 years since the hospital's founding, and 76 years since the inception of one of its key fundraising organizations, the Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary. This 6-year age difference between hospital and auxiliary illustrates how essential the latter was to Peace Arch's very existence, and how this group continues to thrive and support healthcare for all residents of White Rock and South Surrey. But what exactly is a hospital auxiliary, and how does the myriad of bake sales, thrift shops, and community events it stages every year help to support things like new imaging equipment and upgraded emergency rooms? Here to take us through the meaningful and sometimes very personal ways that the Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary has made a difference over its 76 years is Alicia Hagerman, the Auxiliary's president, and Kathy McIntyre, the organization's second vice president. Alicia and Kathy spoke with the new host of Power to Heal, Lance Peverley, a journalist and former editor of the Peace Arch News, and a longtime resident of White Rock, South Surrey.
With us today are two longtime supporters of Peace Arch Hospital's Auxiliary. First up, Auxiliary President Alicia Hagerman. I'm sure anybody who's ever stepped into Peace Arch Hospital is familiar with the term hospital auxiliary, given all the mentions and accolades over the years. But what exactly does auxiliary mean?
Oh my. Well, that's a very good question. The auxiliary, what we do is we provide care and comfort for the patients, staff, and residents at Peace Arch Hospital through the many programs that we provide. We consider ourselves sort of the heartbeat of the hospital in that we are behind the scenes. We do these programs and purchase equipment through our fundraising that really enhance the care that is provided already at the hospital.
Is the focus on patients?
Yes, patients, absolutely. And now, of course, there are long-term residents at the hospital. And some of the programs, because of what we provide, also touch and help the staff as well at the hospital.
Well, it's probably important to note, too, that we contribute a significant amount of money every year to equipment and to capital projects that the foundation leads. Physicians want to practice in a hospital where we have up-to-date and most recent technology, that the ORs are efficient and sort of state-of-the-art. Those are very solid recruitment issues for physicians. So you can say we support physicians, hospital staff, patients, and residents.
Fantastic. I definitely remember the ladies' auxiliaries throughout the years, though I think that term seems a little bit quaint now. I think they became women's auxiliaries and finally just auxiliaries. What does that suggest about the times and attitudes when these groups were first getting started?
Well, of course, the first auxiliary group was a group of women, and they were called the Ladies Auxiliary. You're quite right, but that's pretty 1960s. Over time, of course, we've encouraged men to join. So now we're just the Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary, which is inclusive both in relation to gender and ethnicity.
Why do you think so many women were drawn to these organizations in the beginning?
The reason that the hospital arrived in White Rock is because this group of women with great vision and foresight and dedication decided that a hospital was required in White Rock. None of them wanted to be in labor going to Royal Columbian Hospital in New Westminster. And that was sort of the seed and the goal for them getting together in neighborhood groups with the intention, actually, of building a hospital in White Rock.
That's one of the reasons Gordon Hogue became a lifetime member, because he was at the first auxiliary meetings in 1948.
How old would Gordon Hogue have been back then?
He'd have been 2, yeah. But a lot of the women took their kids. They didn't have babysitters, and a lot of them didn't drive or didn't have a second car in the family, so they met in neighborhood groups.
Now, I'm told back in those days, now it's before my children were born at Peace Arch, before I was born at Peace Arch, there was no hospital at all in White Rock, South Surrey, and it was determined young women who wanted that situation to change.
Their first fundraiser was what they called Leave the Porch Light On. And the idea was, it was of course publicized, that they were fundraising for donations to start the seed money for the hospital in White Rock. So the idea was, if you left your porch light on, you were then available for a donation, and that the women just walked in their neighborhoods to go door to door to fundraise.
The first check that they put together was written to the Ministry of Health, and it was for $1,000. And because of that commitment, the ministry said, okay, we'll partner with you and build a hospital in White Rock. So we had our hospital before Surrey.
Wow.
And I mean, when you think about it, those are the women who made dinner for their husbands, tidied the house, put the kids to bed, and then went out knocking on doors to raise money for the hospital. And they would get $5.
Maybe
$2 for the people who left their porch light on.
Is it fair to say that these women were not only engaging with their community, that they were in a sense creating the community?
Very much, particularly the community that we have today that's very committed to its local hospital. So what they started all those years ago has carried on for 76 years.
Now, I'm told those original groups, they named the groups after the streets or the areas that they lived on. Does that still happen today? Or?
Well, there were quite a number of groups that unfortunately are no longer in existence, but there was Sunset, Semiahmoo, Goodwill.
It was a Man Park group, yeah. And Alicia and I are both in the Goodwill group, but it was renamed sort of latterly to honor Kay Hogue. So it's the Kay Hogue Goodwill group.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Which was one of the founding groups in 1948. So we're very pleased and honored that this Kay Hogue Goodwill group, now as it's renamed, carries on. It's a wonderful legacy to the Hogue family and the community.
The Hogue family were and are prominent members of the White Rock community. Back in 1954, Kay Hogue was part of the first cohort of auxiliary members that helped raise funds to build what is today Peace Arch Hospital. In recognition of her efforts, a group within the auxiliary, the Kay Hogue Goodwill Group, was named in her honor. Kay was the wife of Dr. Alan Hogue, one of the original White Rock doctors who championed the hospital. Today, one of the hospital's extended care units, the Dr. Al Hogue Pavilion, is named after him. And their son Gordon, who still lives in the community, has represented the area in various government positions over the years, including Mayor of White Rock and as an MLA and an MP.
Are there still multiple groups in the community, or is it all the Kehoe group now?
No, it's multiple groups. I think we're down to about 6, though, which is one of the challenges we face is the current challenges with recruiting volunteers. Where we used to have about 300 members, now we have about 140. So the group got smaller. I sincerely believe that the auxiliary is still relevant, but I think we need to figure out how to attract men and women who are in their 60s, 70s. Our membership is aging, and it's happening to every auxiliary in BC.
What would you describe the draw to join?
Well, it's that commitment to supporting the hospital that provides care for your community. But it means a lot of backbreaking fundraising. We don't have any professional fundraisers on our board of directors or in our auxiliary. So we tend to do, I know everybody thinks we just do bake sales, but we do a little bit more than that. But it all requires a fair bit of sweat equity. Like we recently had a fall market. It was a great function, had a lot of fun, but we're getting pretty old to be schlepping around the tables and chairs and putting up tents. It's a lot of work. So now we've started a youth group, and we have 17 youngsters aged about 16, and they're volunteering at all our events. It's been a tremendous boost to the auxiliary.
Is that a social aspect to joining the group as well as getting the work done?
Very social, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually what carried us so well through COVID. We figured out that it was sort of the separate groups, them meeting even via Zoom, sort of kept them socially connected. It's a wonderful network of women, sort of all with the same goal, same compassion and loyalty to the hospital.
This year, 2 anniversaries are being celebrated. The 70th anniversary since the opening of Peace Arch Hospital, and the 76th, I understand, since the birth of the hospital's auxiliary society. I'd like to ask you both how it feels to be part of a group that's been supporting this important healthcare facility since day one.
It's extremely heartwarming. My father was in Peace Arch Hospital for 4 months, and that was a lot of motivation for me to give back to the community. And it really is very heartwarming to see the dedication and the service of these women. Like, we have women in the auxiliary who have surpassed their 90th birthday, and they are still as passionate now as they were then. It's amazing to see, and it's hard not to feel so grateful to the vision of the women who all came before us and what they established and what we continue to do. It's, every day there's something and someone that's been touched by a volunteer, by an auxiliary member at the hospital.
Kathy, as a retired nurse who used to work at Peace Arch Hospital, does the auxiliary feel a bit like an extension of the care you used to provide to patients?
It certainly does. And because you've worked there, you kind of know what will make a difference in patient care, what helps the staff provide care, what the patients really need. I mean, the other day, Lance, one of the programs we run, because we probably run about 15 little programs, and one of them is called Caring Hearts. And the program was implemented to reduce the barriers to discharge. Because what happens is you get somebody at age 85 who's ready to go home, they need oxygen, but the oxygen company can't put the oxygen in until next week. So they just need that little bit of funding so they can buy their own for, say, 6 days until the program kicks in. So we provide that. And last week I was able to take a gift card up to a man in the hospital who was going to assisted living. He had nothing. No towels, no sheets, no dishes, no kitchen stuff. So we gave him a gift card to go shopping at Walmart. And to do that, by doing that too, that empowers people because they can go pick out their own things, which is much nicer than just going out and buying it for him. And the social worker who gave it to him said he cried. He was just so happy to be, yeah. And that's the heart of the work that we do. It's just helping people in that last little bit. The other lovely program we have is called Tea from the Heart, and it's a tea service that we provide on hospital units where they've had a tragic death, where they've lost a colleague, where they just want to have a little bit of joy. And so we bring in the good china cups and the sweets and the tea, and we serve, and they sit. And so it's a way of honoring and recognizing the work that they do.
That sounds very rewarding on a personal level for the people who are volunteering.
Oh, totally. Totally. You always, in volunteering, get way more than you give.
Totally agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
Now, on an earlier podcast, the original host, the great Wayne Cox, explored the life and times of one of the auxiliary's earliest members, Ellen Sinclair Kennett. Alicia, can you give our listeners a brief introduction to Ellen and how our legacy continues to inspire your organization?
That's a great question. It's hard to put into words exactly who Ellen Kennett was, Ellen Sinclair Kennett. A tour de force, a remarkable memory, long-serving volunteer, so dedicated to the auxiliary and the hospital. She was like our auxiliary historian.
Ellen was the person I'd always call if I had a worry, a question, something I didn't know how to solve. She was just somebody you could bounce those kinds of things off, and she'd give you some always very seasoned, practical advice. And behind that advice was just years of history with both the auxiliary and the foundation. She was, when I was 2 or 3 years old, Ellen Sinclair worked with my dad in the Bank of Montreal in Cloverdale.
Long-time history, and she had the most wonderful storytelling ability, always with touch of humor.
Now, she was the first board chair of the Peace Arch Hospital Foundation, which now raises hundreds of thousands of dollars each year from area businesses and residents who appreciate the care they receive, when it was founded in 1988. How did the establishment of this new fundraising entity impact the auxiliary's own efforts to support the hospital?
I think initially it kind of scared us because we weren't sure what our role would be. But over time, we've certainly been able to both realize our current role and extend, and also enjoy the partnership with the foundation. So we work together on a lot of, when it comes to the capital equipment time of the year, the hospital foundation, the auxiliary, and the executive director sit down with a big spreadsheet of the ask from the site. What does the surgery department need? What does maternity need? And then we negotiate who's going to buy what stuff off the list. So we don't have quite as much money, so we buy a smaller number of things and the foundation. And then last year we partnered and purchased the new van for the Ellen Kennett Sinclair building. So it now has the logo of both the foundation and the auxiliary on it.
So there's not as much a distinct line on what your money is going to, but you divide up the tasks or divide up the goals?
We divide up the equipment list. And then when we fundraise for projects, the projects are usually partially funded by the foundation. So we give our money to the foundation. It's very difficult to give your money directly to the hospital because budgeting in hospitals is all zero-based. So at the end of the year, it's zero. If you don't happen to get all the money spent, you can't carry it forward. So it's more cost-effective to give our money to the foundation and support their capital projects. We, of course, always envy the foundation because they have such a broader capacity for fundraising than we have. But we do different things. We run the little programs in the hospital that are important to patients and staff and physicians, and we partner with the foundation.
Hospital auxiliaries are known for their grassroots approach to fundraising. Kathy, can you take us through a few examples, big and small, of how your members connect with the local community in support of better healthcare for the area?
A lot of our fundraising doesn't raise a lot of money, but it shows the community that the auxiliary exists. We have our bunny hop, which is a walk along the promenade in White Rock at Easter. It gives the auxiliary a real presence in the community. And I mean, our fall market, I think we only raised $12,000, which isn't very much compared to other fundraising events, but it was great for the community.
I would say $12,000 can go a long ways.
Yes, and it does.
And it does. Yeah. And the bunny hop during COVID is when we first launched it. And so it was kind of drive-by at the Center for Active Living. The city partnered with us and allowed us to use that space. We had little packages which we gave to each of the participants. And then it was like a self-directed walk, or they could run or they could bike or whatever for a certain number of kilometers. And what they did is they paid a certain participant fee, and that's how we fundraised. When we were able to open it up after COVID, we were able to move it down to the promenade, which has been fabulous. We had the youth ambassadors, the White Rock South Surrey youth ambassadors, act as they were handing out maps so people would know whether they wanted to walk just 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, or a full 5 kilometers along the beach. And for a very nominal fee, people were able to register, and we had packages which we gave to each of them that registered. We hold it on Good Friday morning, and so that's great because kids aren't in school so that they do come down. But I'm always surprised at the number of people who I'm talking to that have not even heard of the auxiliary and what we do. And they know about the hospital, of course, but not kind of the programs that we do and work as an auxiliary. So it's like Kathy said, the fall market, being out in the public, we raised a fair amount of money for some of the programs that we provide, but the promotion and the marketing and the awareness for the community to know and learn a little bit about the auxiliary is really priceless.
It really does sound to me like long-term financial planning, though, because you've attracted, even if it's a small crowd, maybe one person in that crowd looks to you in the future, or maybe you've got a new member 20 years from now, or a future doctor, a future nurse.
Yeah, and of course we're always recruiting for the auxiliary, for the board of directors, for the general membership, for working in the thrift shop, for working in the gift shop. So you can usually, capture a couple of people at an event like that.
Do you get a lot of high school students in those areas?
Well, that's why we started the youth group, because we really didn't have a youth program. I think we had, 30 odd applications. We hired 17 in 2 separate groups because they need volunteer hours.
They do, yes.
For their schooling. So they volunteer for different reasons than we do, but that's okay. Tremendous help, and they get some exposure to healthcare. And yes, there are a couple in the group that we have who are looking for a future in healthcare.
One of the programs we started a couple of years ago, Lance, was what we call Heart to Heart. And it doesn't really cost us any money. And what it does is we have connected with 6 elementary schools, and we provide them with kind of a blank Valentine's card. So these are given to the elementary schools 3 weeks prior to Valentine's Day. And the idea is that some of the teachers will take these to their students, and they will do up Valentine cards to be distributed to the staff, the patients, and the residents at Peace Arch Hospital. And the drawings and the sayings and what these young people had written for the patients at the hospital is just, like I've told people, some of them made you cry, some of them made you laugh, some of them made you do both. And a couple of the principals came back to us when they accepted this program and said, thank you for bringing this to us, because it connects these young people with the hospital, and who knows how that will carry them forward. Maybe they will then think about, a career in healthcare, but at the very least, it makes them aware that they have touched someone in the hospital and really made a difference in their day. Some of them were just priceless. Dear stranger, I'm so sorry you're sick. I hope you get to see your family soon.
Love Bob.
Yeah, love Bob. Or
that is heartfelt. It is.
Heart. We send you hearts. Remember, you are someone special. Just amazing, heartfelt, wonderful messages. And the first year also we had pictures. I got volunteer resources at the hospital to take photos of the staff or patients, if they gave their permission to do so, of them reading the cards. And it made me cry to see these photos. They were so wonderful, so touching.
And I think hospitals can be a scary place for younger people who've never experienced it, because we're all going to experience the hospital at some point in our community. And by introducing it, seeing the people behind it, seeing the people who are using it, I think is quite rewarding for them. The Superfluity Shop, can you tell me a little bit about that?
The Superfluity Shop is a wonderful thrift store that provides major funding for us as an auxiliary. There's wonderful stories about the Superfluity Shop. They first opened in an old home in White Rock, sort of a pioneer home in White Rock. And one of the stories that is just so great, I think, is because it was in an older home, there were always repairs that needed to be done. And one of the auxiliary members called her husband to come and do this little minor repair. So he came over and did what he needed to do. And when he came back to look for his tool chest, the tool chest was gone, and he found that it had been sold while he was doing the repair. And that's always just been such a great story, I think, of the Superfluity shop.
Oh, I love that. He was donating more than his time that day, then.
Exactly. Somebody probably, yes, might still have that tool chest because it was probably well stocked.
But you asked earlier about the carrying on the legacy of for the men and women that came before us. And when they decided to buy the property that the current thrift shop sits on, those were the days where women couldn't get credit cards on their own, couldn't get bank loans on their own. But those women went forward, managed to get the money needed, and bought the property. So you feel this incredible sense of responsibility in terms of, your fiduciary responsibility and carrying that legacy forward.
Is there a lot of provincial oversight in what you're able to do, or help anyway from the provincial government?
No. This year, the provincial government allocated, I think it was 24 million to not-for-profits across the province to help people recover from COVID. But the major thrust of the money was to be used in projects that would lift people up out of poverty, which is a little bit out of our scope. We came up with an idea. What we wanted to do, we wanted to refurbish a lot of the patient family waiting areas in the hospital, because at the moment they're usually just two chairs sitting at the end of the hallway, and make them more comfortable and inviting spaces. But we weren't successful in the grant application.
Is that still a goal? Is that something that could be done?
It's still out there. It's still something that we feel is quite important. We might look for other sources of grants to fund that. I think it's really important. Very sensitive conversations happen in those little sitting areas. It's where the doc sits down with the family and tells them that mom's at the end. It's where the staff sit with the family. It's where families sit together. And they're just not very comfortable or inviting spaces, and we like to fix them up. And it's consistent with our mission.
Care and comfort.
Yeah.
Through a combination of proceeds from its thrift store and hospital gift shop, along with the many fundraisers staged by various groups within the organization, the Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary supports an amazingly wide range of projects for Peace Arch Hospital, all with the aim of improving the patient experience at this busy healthcare center. Just a few examples include new birthing rooms in the hospital's maternity ward, a patient hair salon, 2 residential care buses, and a portable ventilator. In 2009, a $3 million check, the auxiliary's largest single contribution to date, was written towards a new emergency department and operating room expansion project.
Some observers might look at the direct personal connections your organization makes with the people of White Rock and South Surrey and assume your organization is run in an equally informal manner.
No.
That's not really true, is it? Starting with you, Alicia, as president.
Well, I'm president, and fortunate to have first vice president Kyle McKay, second vice president Kathy McIntyre. We have a secretary, a treasurer, and then we have directors at large. Things have really blossomed, maybe, as far as our governance goes, because we do have staff now. And communication is a huge issue for any organization. So we do have communications committee under one of our directors on the board. And now, of course, with the youth group, we have another director who will be responsible for leadership of the youth group. But it's a relatively small group when you think of what we do and all the programs and things that we purchase for the hospital. So right now, there are 9 of us on the board. And that includes our manager of our gift shop at the hospital. So that's a relatively small number of people who have taken on a fairly large task.
The board members come with different skills. Are you looking for any new people with specific skills that might be listening?
Always looking for new people. Always. We started doing, because I was on the board of directors at hospice for about 6 years, we had a board skills inventory. So you had categories of skills that were important to you, and that's what you used as your recruitment tool. So you'd look at your current board members and sort of look down the road a couple of years and say, we need to start recruiting an accountant, or we need to start getting someone with a legal background. So boards are becoming maybe a little more sophisticated than they were 20 years ago. And yes, we're always looking for people to join our board.
And all skills. It doesn't matter what they bring at this point.
Yes,
absolutely.
A pulse. We like a pulse.
Yes. A warm body is good.
I mean, you all seem to share empathy from the people I've spoken to. That seems to be the one skill coming in that all your members seem to have.
It's kind of important. Yeah.
How about some of your personal highlights or best moments with the auxiliary? Kathy, how long have you been with the organization and what memories really stand out for you?
How long? 8-9 years?
Oh, no, it's more than that, Kathy.
It's more than that. I know this because you wrote the column that I used to publish for many, many years in the Peace Arch News.
That was for another group I started, which was the Seniors Health Network. And it's really neat when you can have a connection with hospice and the auxiliary and the Seniors Health Network and the foundation. And I did some work with a mental health group through Together. And you can learn from each of the experiences that you have and put it together and share. So what I learned here, I can use there. That was really, really helpful. I think the neatest thing I did this year, Lance, was we ran our first 50-50 draw. So I got to call the guy who won. Oh my gosh, what a thrill that was. He kept saying, "You're kidding." This is a joke, right? And I mean, the lottery wasn't huge. I think he won about 10 grand, but he came in to pick up his check, apologized for being a bit goofy on the phone. And I said, "People are going to ask me, so what are you going to do with the money?" And he said, "Well, I was going to retire later this year, and I think I'll just move that up by a few months."
Oh,
life-changing.
That is wonderful. That is life-changing.
I think the 50-50 lottery is a good example of the struggle we have with fundraising. So our lottery raised, 20 grand. Why doesn't it raise 200? How do we get to 200 from here? Where do we do our marketing? Does anybody read print media anymore? How do we get bigger and how do we grow? And none of us have any marketing experience.
This is interesting. I think maybe somebody's listening right now who might have an answer or direction.
I hope so. Help these old ladies raise more money. Because in terms of, the sweat equity required to do the 50-50 is teeny weeny compared to some of the other things that we do.
Yes.
And we need to build up our donor base. We have a monthly giving program, but it's not well subscribed. So how do we do that? How do we build that up?
Right.
Yes, we have a lot to learn.
Alicia, how long have you been with the organization?
About 15 years, yes. And it was interesting because belonging, both Kathy and I, to the Kehoe Goodwill Group, their membership got down to, I think, about 1 or 2 members, as unfortunately members had passed on or whatever, and being one of the original groups, a long history. And it was another auxiliary member who went to Laverne Hogue and Joan DeWentz and said, if you want, I know you've always talked about joining the auxiliary, kind of in honor of your mom and your dad and carrying on their legacy. Well, now's the time to really think about it seriously, because the group that your mom was involved in is going to be folding if we don't beef up that membership. So Joan and Laverne reached out to Kathy and myself and Maureen Annabelle and a number of other friends in the community and said, okay, let's do it. If you're wanting to be involved in the auxiliary, now's the time. And that is when we kind of all joined.
What you've described going out to friends. Now, those are pretty good friends to have, that group.
Yes, for sure. And, we've been fairly successful for a small group to fundraise with that. But
it's hard to get new ideas. But to that end, we've also just organized what we're calling the Auxiliaries Day. And we invited Langley, Surrey, Abbotsford, Delta. I think there's about 7 hospitals that are coming next Wednesday at the Fish and Game Club. And the whole purpose of it is really just to do some brainstorming together. What do you do about fundraising? How are your communications? Any technology updates? Just to see if we can get some ideas and share some of the stuff we've been doing.
Is this the first time that's happened?
About a year and a half ago, Royal Columbian Auxiliary reached out to Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary and wanted to get together to do kind of that same thing, just sort of network and to get some ideas. And so Kathy and I went, and it was so interesting because their structure is quite different than ours as far as the Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary. They do not have any paid staff. their volunteer resources through Fraser Health do all their clerical work, and I think their foundation does their accounting. So it's quite different because we, as Kathy said, now that we have a couple of paid employees, we have our HR and a lot more governance and policy and procedures that we have to follow.
Although the most recent large-scale survey by Statistics Canada on volunteering in this country was conducted back in 2018, 2 years before the words COVID-19 first became widely known, the study revealed patterns that are still relevant in our post-pandemic world. Among the notable findings, in terms of formal volunteering, that is, volunteer work carried out on behalf of an organization, hospital work had the highest number of volunteer hours. Overall, women from baby boomer and millennial generations were more likely to volunteer than men from the same age groups, although no significant differences were found among other generations. And although the likelihood of volunteering generally decreased with age, older volunteers contributed on average the greatest number of hours.
You say that your group is aging, and is that the same for all auxiliaries?
Very similar experience. And I think it's probably not only province-wide, it's probably national. I don't know whether the culture has changed so that there's a population in the middle here that hasn't had exposure to volunteerism. I don't know. Both my parents volunteered a lot, so it was just quite natural for me. My mom was part of the auxiliary, but it isn't quite natural for a whole bunch of people to volunteer.
Do you know if there's an average age of memberships across Canada?
Luckily, the youth group has brought down our median age
That helped a lot.
significantly.
You had 17, 16-year-olds and you start to look pretty good. But everything's changing too in terms of technology. I mean, we've had to learn a whole different way of communicating, getting on Facebook, getting on Instagram, making your world digital. We're changing our accounting system. We've put Shopify point of sales technology in at our gift store. The whole world's changing a lot.
Well, you described young people. You've got a new group of young people more recently coming in. How about new Canadians? Do you have people that have moved to our country that are interested in taking part?
Yeah, and we're continuing to do recruitment to make our organization more diverse. It's traditionally been a group of old white ladies, and we had a group of Asian ladies approach us who wanted to become part of the auxiliary. And so that was a wonderful process to go through. And they've helped with our average age, and they bring just an incredible energy. I had to interview all of them, about 18, and their answers to the questions were why do you want to volunteer? I want to be a role model for my children.
That is wonderful.
And I want to give back to Canada. Canada has given me a home. Their answers were just so heartwarming. We have some language challenges, but we're working with that.
Did they reach out to you, or did you try to expand?
They reached out to us, yes. We don't have any South Asian members in our group, and I don't know why, but there's a group that meets at the community center called SALSA, South Asian Ladies Social Activities, and I'm just trying to think of a respectful way to approach them and tell them about the auxiliary. We'd love to broaden our group.
As I say, people listening to this, maybe you might get some emails after this.
Oh, I'd love that. Because we'd welcome anyone from the community who's willing to support Peace Arch Hospital, for sure.
Now, if there are any new volunteers, what would you like to say to them?
Oh, it's a fabulously rewarding experience to be part of the auxiliary that raises funds for Peace Arch Hospital and delivers programs of comfort and care to our residents and patients. And we're kind of a fun group to work with, actually. It was fun at the fall market because we had a group of kids. Some of them were from the Samuel Jazz Band, and some of them were just kids who jammed in their basement. And so they played a bit of music, and then we had a professional singer that we had hired to come in. But when he came in, the kids jammed with him. Oh, it was a wonderful experience, Lance. It was fabulous music. Well, unfortunately, everybody stopped shopping and started dancing. So you had to go around and say a little less dancing, a little more spending. But that was great. And now these same kids are putting on a concert on Saturday as a fundraiser for Peace Arch Hospital Auxiliary. And it's called Concert of Gratitude.
Oh, that is wonderful.
So, yes, and it gives them, our youth group, experience in organizing a function like that. Because, you've got to rent a facility, you've got to bring in some refreshments, you've got to get a schedule, so they'll probably have 100-ish people, and they're using Mount Olive church.
And maybe new members will come from there.
We're hoping so.
We're always open to that.
What is the best way for people to get in touch with you to volunteer?
Probably through the office. Direct line would be 778-736-0880. Or you can email or check our website too, also at paha.ca. And that goes through all our history, wonderful pictures of events, what we do, what we've purchased, what's coming up. It's a great site for information.
Can you leave us with some personal thoughts on the Auxiliary's 76 years of helping create healthier, safer community?
Well, it's actually a privilege to be able to do this work because, you spend years working in the healthcare system and now you're sort of on the other side of the coin being a volunteer, but you get to continue to give, which is always very rewarding, and continue to hold on to that legacy that the people before us created.
Yeah, we're so honored to remember, and I'm going to cry.
Yeah, it's quite amazing when you think of all the work that came before you, and you want to make sure that everything that you do contributes to the future of the organization.
Such vision that they had, it just amazes me when I think about what these women in a neighborhood did to bring a hospital, first of all, to White Rock, and then to continue such compassionate care.
Yeah.
That just continues. Every day there are things that happen behind the scenes. I refer to us sometimes as the heartbeat of the hospital. We're kind of behind the scenes. We're constant. We're always present. And it's vital. What we do is so vital, as a heart is also vital. And I tell a couple of times when we've had gatherings, I've said, every cup of tea you pour, every puzzle you put together, every hand you touch, every smile you give, everything makes a difference. And it's sort of the community of us together, and what we accomplish is absolutely incredible.
So should we send you an application form?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You must have lots of free time.
Lots of free time. I think you're going to have a few people approach you after this. I really do.
Oh, I love that.
That would be wonderful.
But I want to say you've described the people that came before you in such glowing terms. And I hope you know that the community appreciates what you personally are doing. You're continuing this. And maybe there'll be a podcast or whatever comes next after podcasts a few years from now where we're telling your story.
Yeah, it's an honor to be with everyone that's involved in the auxiliary and those in the hospital that we work with and work for. It's an amazing place. And it takes everyone, it takes every hand to produce what we do at Peace Arch Hospital. Every little piece means something, and it's better as a whole than as a part. So, I think we're very proud to continue the legacy.
Thank you very much for everything you do, and thank you both so much for sharing today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it.
The Power to Heal podcast, presented by Peace Arch Hospital Foundation in White Rock, British Columbia, takes you behind the scenes of an innovative hospital foundation and introduces you to the team who find new and sometimes surprising ways to engage with the local community and help fund the best healthcare possible in the region. Since 1988, the foundation has raised over $250 million for capital projects, medical equipment, and community health programs. Their passionate and caring team's number one priority is the prudent stewardship of your gifts and the resulting positive impact on patients and medical staff at Peace Arch Hospital and the entire White Rock, South Surrey community. Peace Arch Hospital Foundation, where innovation comes to life in so many ways. The simple act of giving is truly transformational. Every dollar we receive is enhancing healthcare in this community, whether it's supporting our capital infrastructure, the purchase of essential medical equipment, or funding a wellness program like stroke recovery or a children's club to encourage healthy habits and active play. Our wide range of giving options includes monthly donations, an increasingly popular and convenient choice that makes the greatest impact on your community hospital. You just sign up once and the rest is automatic, and that includes receiving a consolidated tax receipt at the end of the year. But no matter what giving option you choose, it all matters and it all makes a difference. Be sure to subscribe to Power to Heal wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Each episode brings you inspiring stories about the Peace Arch Hospital Foundation and its innovative approach to supporting better healthcare throughout the White Rock, South Surrey community. Thanks for listening.
Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.